G'day there ladies and gents of the internet, I am the Braveheart Aussie and welcome to a journey in world building. Today we're going to be starting something new here on the channel related to phase 2 of our Dark Diaspora project by introducing the concept of threats. Let's start by distinguishing threats from terrors. Local terrors represent attributes of different settlements, planets, moons and bases that have significant negative impacts on the viability or quality of life, or in some cases the sheer survivability of the setting. They are location specific and are typically the result of certain evolutionary or developmental attributes associated with that location. In contrast, a threat could be seen as something of a macro form of a terror. They may cover multiple settings, entire quadrants, or maybe even the diaspora as a whole. I will, however, distinguish threats from negative and adversarial factions within the diaspora, such as the Tarvan Covenant Red Fleet. While this fleet represents a major threat to multiple settings across the diaspora, they are more of an element of a faction in the typical sense and are not considered a threat within this context. Instead, threats take on a more environmental characteristic and could include things such as nebula, supernova, or other stellar or even eldritch phenomenon. Similar to the terrors, these are negative in nature for the most part, though some factions and settings may adapt to the threats to create novel benefits and outcomes for their location. So basically, threats are macro terrors, and could even be considered an overarching story arc within the Dark Diaspora narrative. However, the best way to explain what the concept of a threat is to demonstrate it with an example, so let's get started today with its first threat, the Necrum Phage. Beyond the Cernicus passage to the galactic north of Old Sol is a relatively isolated area of space, referred to as the Necrum Void. This area has a disproportionately lower share of planetary systems, though many of the stars have extensive asteroid belts and other signs of cataclysmic events to the rocky planets that were once in those systems. This phenomenon drew the attention of the exploration cast of the independent world of the Republic of Merzadam, who sent out survey ships to uncover the secrets of the void. This led to the discovery of what has become known as the Necrum Phage. This is a xenobiological spaceborne organism of unknown origins. It is characterized by a hard oval-shaped pointed pod known as a phage seed. Estimates by the Merzadam scientific cast put the number of phage seeds in sublight speed traveling between planetary systems in the Necrum Phage up to 2 million. These seeds travel in the space between stars with the hope of being captured by a star's gravity well. For the purpose of a seed is to distribute the phage's biology across the interstellar space. Once a phage seed comes into contact with a rocky planet, it seems to orient itself towards the planet's atmosphere and strike the ground with tremendous force, burying the seed intact between 600 and 2400 feet below the surface. Once in place, the seed enters its germination phase, and large, deep red and black coloured tendrils similar to roots emerge from the pod, begin to bury deep underground. These roots act as both anchor for the seed, as well as a source of nutrients, minerals and energy necessary to shift the seed into its emergence phase. This can occur at any point in time after the initial root network has a total coverage area underground of up to 50 square miles. Because of the underground nature of the initial breach, as well as the subsequent root distribution and spread, it is possible for this entire process to occur without any residents or observers on the planet being aware. Once the seed reaches the emergence phase, it then protrudes through to the surface, at which time the phage takes on its more sinister character. It begins to rapidly spread across the surface of the planet or moon, forming a tangle of pseudo-metallic vine-like structures called the bramble that spread and take up every single possible area. The growth rate of this initial emergence is rapid, with the roughly circular front of the bramble spreading up to 1 mile per day. As the growth continues and the bramble extends beyond the range by which the initial seed and a supporting root network can support it, when the growth reaches the point where the original seed and a supporting root network can't support the extent of the bramble's reach, it creates a high concentration cluster of bramble, which then turns into a hub for localized energy and nutrients extraction through the burying of what is effectively a taproot. This helps to create a multi-point network within the bramble to draw upon the necessary resources to allow the bramble to continue to expand. At this point in time, with multiple points of energy and nutrients extraction, the entire carapace of the bramble vines begin to pulsate with a red glow across their pseudo-metallic surface. As the growth phase continues, all competing forms of life on the surface are quickly extinguished, and the localized atmosphere within the bounds of the growth front begins to change to take on a more noxious sulfur-based content. This starts to spread across the planet, effectively polluting the atmosphere and terraforming the planet over time. It is estimated that based on the growth rate of the phage, it can take several centuries for a single seed to reach the point where it has covered the entire surface of the planet. However, long before this time, the atmosphere of the planet has been fully terraformed or transformed into the alien biology's preference, and the original habitability to human life has been utterly destroyed. At the time of the Dark Diaspora, there are 3 planets across 2 star systems known to have phage infestations. One of these planets, known as Petrac, is settled and is home to approximately 100,000 people living in a semi-diversified economy. If there is a quote-unquote war front in the battle against the Necrum Phage, then it is absolutely on the planet of Petrac. Unfortunately, to date, all attempts to stop or even push back the growth of the phage have been unsuccessful. The xenobiology is incredibly resilient to all forms of radiation, heat, temperature, concussive and explosive force. This includes the use of atomic and AG planet buster bombs, which have been periodically dropped from orbit on the original seed landing point on the planet to little effect. Efforts to hold the expansion of the phage to the planet have turned to the development of biological weapons, including attempts to map the phage genome and develop a custom and tailored weapon system for deployment. However, efforts to study the specimen are hampered by high risk of contamination, with small particles given off by damaged or broken parts of phage brambles having the potential to infect people with what is known as the phage blight. Initial symptoms of the blight are an extremely high fever, which kills more than 50% of people due to heat shock and associated immunological collapse. However, for the remaining 50%, their bodies can take on bramble-like growths that extend and cover their entire bodies within the space of several months. This process is thought to have been a secondary distribution method for the phage by having them effectively subsume mobile life forms on the planets that they invade to create secondary and tertiary points from which the phage can grow. In the case of the majority of humans who are infected with the phage, those that die from the initial infection are placed in highly irradiated chambers, which to date has only been capable of preventing a blight sufferer from inadvertently seeding a new part of the planet with their corpse. There is, however, a very small percentage of the people, 0.1% in fact, who survive not only the initial heat shock, but also the brambles taking over their body. These survivors are referred to as blight bearers, and the phage takes on something of a symbiotic relationship with the individual's immune system and body. While blight bearers are generally shunned from society due to this symbiotic relationship, this has resulted in them taking on very unique physiological characteristics. For example, they have what is in effect an exoskeleton, which is almost impervious to all forms of physical and energy attacks. They are capable of surviving for hours and in some cases days in the black of space without protection or support, and can also go months and in some cases over a year without food or water. They seem to be able to draw down on an internal energy source located within their bramble's exoskeleton to support their internal systems. At the time of the Dark Diaspora, a handful of light bearers can be found on free flagger vessels servicing the region, but beyond the Cernicus Passage, acting as astro engineers and weapons masters. However, they are banned from passing through the Cernicus Passage into the wider Diaspora for fears that they will spread the contaminant. When the phage reaches totality in its coverage of a planet, it then transitions into the maturity phase. The existing subsurface root system plunges very deep underground towards the molten core of the world and begins to extract extreme amounts of energy to mature the global entity. Key taproot knots across the entire network start to balloon and expand to cover a much wider area, reaching almost as high as into the tops of the noxious atmosphere themselves. These knots become biological factories for the creation of more seeds, millions and millions of them. Once the seeds are fully formed, the taproots maximize their energy extraction and in the process begin to undermine the structural integrity of the planet's core and subsurface. This last act converts the entire Bramble network into a series of hyperconductive conduits that energize these knot factories and result in the mass ejection at near relativistic speeds of the seeds to cross the universe, seeking a new home to invade. This combination of viral and plant-like characteristics makes the phage somewhat familiar to humanity, though its biomechanical composition renders it completely alien as well. There are some that argue that this is an artificial biological construct created by a long-dead alien, while others claim that it is an optimized, almost simplistic form of xenobiological evolution. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we're going to leave this threat today. As you can see, this concept is about big things rather than focused on just one thing happening on a single planet or setting, and may in fact form an integral part of a story or narrative that's built here into the Dark Diaspora. If you have enjoyed this new Phase 2 concept, leave a like and also a comment below and let me know which part of it you enjoyed the most. As you can see, I'm putting a lot of effort to fully flesh out this concept, so hopefully you appreciate and are enjoying it as much as I am. And if you do have other ideas for threats that could be plaguing the Dark Diaspora universe, make sure you put those in the comments below as well. But that is it for today. Thank you so much. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and may the journey continue.
Hey!